This is Audible.
This book is full of spiders. Seriously, dude, don't touch it. By David Wong. 105 minutes until the massacre at Firth Asylum. Amy was jolted awake, ripped out of an awful nightmare that involved something terrible happening to the people she loved. She didn't remember the details of the dream, but didn't need to. That was the only nightmare she ever had. She was shocked that she had drifted off. If you ever needed proof that we are prisoners of biology, there it is. These could be her last minutes on Earth, and her body decided to sleep through a bunch of them. Josh was rubbing his finger on the screen of his phone, and Amy was pretty sure he was playing a game. They were absolutely alone on the highway, not meeting a single car coming the other direction. No taillights as far as they could see. Amy moved up and took the empty passenger seat next to the driver, Fredo. He looked more scared than she was. She kept him company. She found out his last name was Borelli, and that he was getting a degree in public relations, but was thinking of changing his major because a lot of the classes depressed him. Fredo's brother was in the Marines, as his father had been. Fredo's dad had fought in Desert Storm, Granddad in Vietnam. Brother saw action in Afghanistan. Fredo took classes in PowerPoint. Fredo was really into Japanese anime, but none of the porn stuff, he assured her. He didn't have any friends or family in Undisclosed, but hoped David was okay. They talked about Battlestar Galactica for a while. That made the time go by, as Amy knew it would, and soon Josh was telling Fredo to turn and exit the highway onto a country road that Amy knew would eventually take them around the lake, past the woods and the turkey farm/stench factory. "Where are we going?" Josh said, "We have to get off the highway before the Army's roadblock. This road circles around the lake and comes in behind the industrial park. The friendly checkpoints are there. Once we get through, then we meet up with Ogza." "Where are they?" "They set up inside the building Reaper abandoned. I guess they left a ton of equipment and supplies behind. But that means they're right there outside of quarantine, and they'll be the first to get overrun if the quarantine fails. So the first order of business is to meet up with them and get a status update. But it's a fortified building, and we're all going to be armed. Everything is going to be fine." Josh turned out to not be full of crap on the subject of getting inside town. The Army guys manning the checkpoint on the country roads south of the lake let the RV through after a short conversation with Fredo. But then, a few miles later, they met a second checkpoint, one that was approximately 10 times scarier than the first. It was a terrifying wall of black vehicles and men in equally terrifying black suits. They had night vision goggles or something behind their visors that lit up red in the night, making them look like freaking demons. "Josh, what is this? Who are—" Josh shushed her, but Amy thought he looked like he was trying with all his might to keep poop from escaping his body. An army of the black-clad men with their elaborate machine guns swarmed the bus, those red eyes floating in the night. Barrels were raised, like they were ready to paint the inside of the RV red. One of the guards went to the driver's side door, and Fredo held a one-way conversation with him. Fredo gave the guy the Ogza passcode or whatever, but there was no answer. The guy backed away and conferred with someone else. After a tightly knotted minute, he waved them through. Amy and the 7 members of the Zombie Response Squad entered Outbreak Ground Zero. The power seemed to be out in most of the town, and all the stores were closed, but they would be anyway, since it was the middle of the night. Still, no signal on her phone. Fredo said, "We're 6 blocks away. Still nothing from Ogza?" Josh tapped on his laptop and said, "No, everything's been cut off for the last hour." Amy said, "We probably just got close enough to the town where the wireless signals are all blocked or whatever. Like, maybe they can still send, but we can't receive now." Josh said, "That's probably it," in a way that did not sound at all convincing. "I actually don't know how they were getting around the blackout before." Fredo said, "Whoa, is that it? The lights down there?" Josh answered, "That's the quarantine. That's the city's hospital back there behind all that. They got the perimeter all lit up. Look at that fence. Jesus, Fredo breathed. It's right there. They're right there behind that fence. Jesus. Amy could see Fredo's imagination spinning with images of what creatures must be shambling beyond that fence. Or maybe she was projecting, because that's what she was doing. And David is in there with them. Wait. Why were there advertisements all over the fence? Under one of the floodlights, she could see an ad for McDonald's bratwurst. A chubby guy hugging a long machine gun, a gun Amy recognized as the gun all of the bad guys use in Vietnam movies, said, "What do we do if they've been overrun?" Josh answered, "We'll have to play it by ear," which Amy understood to mean, "We'll turn around and run away and congratulate ourselves for having tried." The RV continued past the quarantine and headed right for the creepiest buildings in town, the old TB asylum, a depressing old building that looked like a giant cinder block somebody had fished out of a swamp, next to a smaller building just like it, both of them looming over a bunch of dead trees. Amy said, "Okay, that place does not look safe." The larger building was damaged, with smoke drifting from a huge hole in one end. A lot of equipment was scattered around the yard. She saw boxes of supplies on a pallet and at least 2 hoods from decontamination suits laying in the weeds. They'd all either been killed or run away in a panic, and this RV full of college kids was declaring it their new safe house. Josh said, "I bet it's one of the safest locations in town. The feds already did the job of securing all the windows and doors, and Ogza says they found a lot of food and stuff left behind." The RV was rolling to a stop. Amy stared at the massive, smoking hole in the wall, and her imagination lit up with the image of some elephant-sized creature, breathing fire, smashing through it with its fists. "Oh, you have got to be kidding me, Sullivan." Josh said, "That's the gym down there, with the hole in it. But Ogza got that sealed off, so you can't get into the rest of the building that way. I guess some oxygen tanks exploded." "Were they trying to kill a shark?" "What?" Amy didn't answer. To Fredo, Josh said, "You got the flares?" Without a word, Fredo reached into the glove compartment and pulled out an orange pistol with a comically oversized barrel. He rolled down his window, pointed the gun toward the sky, and fired. The lawn was bathed in light, a tiny white star rocketing up, then drifting lazily back to Earth. Josh said, "They're supposed to signal with a light from one of the windows. They have a lantern or something, and they'll flash it off and on." Everyone stared at the darkened building. Minutes passed. No lights. "Maybe they didn't see it," Josh said. "Do another one. Do you have a red one? Maybe they missed the last one." Another flare fired. Another wait. No response from the building. Vietnam gun guy said, "Man, that's ominous as shit. Maybe we should go back." Josh said, "Hey, this is what we came for, Donnie. If they need help, so be it. That's why we brought all this hardware. This is the real thing here. We're not just playing zombie video games and jerking off here. Everybody load up. We're going in." Amy finally spoke up and said what she had been wanting to say for more than 2 hours. It was futile, she knew, but she had to try. "Josh, I want you to leave the guns behind." Vietnam gun guy, Donnie, said, "What are we supposed to use? Harsh language?" Josh asked, "Why?" Amy took a breath and said, "I don't know how to say this without bruising your ego or whatever, but you've accidentally pointed that gun at my head 4 times in the course of loading it. Josh, I'm impressed that you did this. You're amazing for just making this trip, but you don't know what you're doing with that thing. And I think there's a 1% chance you're going to actually need the guns, and a 99% chance that a stray cat is going to jump out of the shadows and you're all going to shoot each other. And me." Josh laughed. "I'm not joking. You're not pixels on a screen. You're flesh and blood. If you get spooked and shoot your friend, he's dead, and dead forever, or in a wheelchair. You'll live with that the rest of your life. Leave the guns behind. If there's something in there, we are way, way, way more likely to survive if we just run as hard as we can back here than if you try to stand and act out some video game fantasy. The guns will just weigh you down, Josh. Well, be careful, I promise. No, you won't, because you don't have the training to understand what careful is. Josh, I'm begging you. I'm sorry, but if you leave the guns here, when we get back, I will have sex with you. I'll put that in writing. I'm not kidding at all. Your friends can watch. You can videotape it. Stop it. We're not going in there without protection, and that's that. And this isn't a video game fantasy. You're insulting all of us when you say that. As he spoke, Josh was affixing some small electronic device to his shotgun. Amy thought it was some kind of fancy scope, but Josh tapped away at his laptop, and a video window appeared. He swung the shotgun around, and the video image swung around with it. Josh had a wireless gun camera. He handed the laptop to Amy and said, "If we don't make it back, make sure the video gets uploaded to the YouTube channel. The world needs to know what's happened here." Amy said, "Oh, so I'm not going now?" "We've got the guns." "No, listen. We're going to go make sure it's all clear first. Then we'll come back for you. Don't look at me like that. We're not being sexist here. Fredo's going to wait behind too, and he's male as shit. He's going to stay behind the wheel, engine running, in case we have to make a quick getaway. You're going to be watching it live on my gun cam. If things go bad in there and it looks like we're not going to make it out, don't hesitate to just go." "I won't." "Fredo, you hear that? If I say go, we go, right?" "Yeah, I'm hitting the gas at the sound of gunshots and screams." To Amy, Josh said, "Okay, your new job is now to make sure Fredo doesn't leave unless it's absolutely necessary." To the men in the RV, Josh said, "Regulators, mount up." Everyone stood. One guy had a little flashlight attached to his gun, and he clicked it on. The kid in back strapped on his bulky night vision goggles. Josh said, "Remember, save your ammo. This isn't a video game. We're not going to pick up more along the way. Short, controlled bursts." He turned to Amy and said, "I'll be back. I promise." Josh took a deep breath and opened the side door. A blast of cold air shouldered its way in. Outside was the sound of wind whistling through the wounded building, and suddenly Amy badly wanted that door closed and locked again, to have the warm metal cocoon sealed off from whatever was out there. "Stop it." The boys started filing out into the darkness, and Amy heard Josh say, "Get your ears on." Everybody pulled out earmuffs, or plugs, protecting against that debilitating monster shriek John had talked about. The door clapped shut behind them. Amy looked down at the laptop and saw the asylum grounds on the shaky, grainy image from Josh's gun feed, the barrel protruding into the bottom of the camera's view. It lent a feeling of unreality to the whole thing. She wasn't sitting in the middle of a clearly haunted abandoned TB asylum, crawling with monsters. It was all just some stupid video she was watching on a computer. The view bounced along the grounds, approaching the front doors of the old building. The guy to the left of Josh had the flashlight on his gun, the beam whipping wildly around the front lawn like the guy holding it was riding a mechanical bull. The view steadied as Josh arrived at the big wooden front doors. Flashlight guy grabbed one of the old, tarnished brass handles and pulled. Locked. Josh knocked and said, "Hello? My name is Josh Cox. I've got a team of 6 armed uninfected out here. We're offering our assistance to Agza. Is anyone in there?" Nothing. They all stared at the locked door like a bunch of chimpanzees looking at a car engine. "We've, been following your updates until the feed cut out a little while ago. Are any of you still at this location? Prince Spawn? Direwolf?" Amy's view whipped downward as Josh apparently pointed the gun at the ground. The kid with the flashlight shouted, "I can pick the lock!" Another voice yelled, "No, you can't!" Everyone screaming to be heard over their ear protection. Josh yelled, "They probably got it barricaded! There's probably some other door they come and go out of! Let's go around! Everybody stay sharp! The view swung back up to shoulder level again, and the hipster zombie squad edged along the wall of the building, the flashlight beam flashing back and forth, illuminating boarded-up windows and drifts of dead leaves blown against the foundation, looking for another entrance. Watching through the video feed was frustrating. Whenever the flashlight beam would swing out of view, the video window would go completely black. The little wireless camera had no night vision capability. She peered up over the laptop and out of the windshield of the RV in time to see the gang disappear around the corner of the building. The trailing guy, the one who had the night vision goggles and looked about 13 years old, was sweeping his gun behind them, watching their six, just like he saw somebody do in a movie or cartoon. He rounded the corner, and Amy and Fredo were now truly alone. "So," she said, "how fast can this thing go?" Fredo said, "Depends on how much stuff you want me to run over when I do it. Thing handles like a blimp." Amy returned to her laptop, and in the video feed window saw the group had stopped moving. The mic on the gun camera was weak, and she could barely pick up words over the background noise. Every time the wind blew, everything was drowned out by a sound like crashing ocean waves. The noise cleared up enough for her to hear Josh say, "Where?" She faintly heard flashlight guy yell, "Right there, man! Behind the wheelbarrow!" She couldn't see what they were looking at. Josh had a frustrating habit of pointing the gun camera at the most irrelevant spot possible, lazily aiming the gun at his feet, or the cloudy sky, or right at the head of one of his friends. By the time the camera angle settled on the spot, Flashlight was on his hands and knees, studying the ground in front of him. Did he lose a contact lens? Josh edged in closer, around a rusty wheelbarrow somebody had pulled out of the way, and Amy saw that they had found a basement window. The glass had been bashed out, probably decades ago, but if it had been boarded up, it wasn't now. Wind howled into the mic, obliterating bits of their conversation. "No way they just left it like this! Don't see anybody! Hello? Can anyone hear me? My name is Josh Cox! No, let's go in!" Flashlight aimed his beam through the window while the guy with the Vietnam gun, Donnie, got down on his hands and knees and writhed into the building, the jagged bits of broken glass making it look like a brick mouth was swallowing him whole. For a moment, nothing happened. Amy could feel her bladder seizing up as she watched the dark basement window bobbing in the gun cam feed. Finally, Donnie's hands emerged and gestured that the coast was clear. Josh was next, but the camera stayed behind as he handed his gun to somebody so he'd have his hands free to crawl in. The view swirled around as the gun was handed back and forth, and then, a moment later, Amy was looking at a dim room that looked like an old cafeteria with a faded black and red checkerboard tile floor. The view swung back around to the window, then to the floor nearby where a sheet of ancient plywood bristling with curled nails had been tossed aside. Josh yelled, "They did have it barricaded! Somebody took it off from inside!" As another guy crawled through the window, someone off-camera said, "Told you, man. They evacuated, probably for the same reason the feds did. We probably passed them on the road coming here." Josh said, "You sound relieved, Mills. Man, when we didn't get an answer, I thought we were going to find this place full of dead bodies." "Me too." "Hey, if you're suggesting we abort, you convinced me." Loudly and clearly, Josh said, "Not until we do a sweep of the building." Amy decided Josh just now remembered that everything was being recorded for possible posthumous YouTubing. The whole gang of 6 was inside the cafeteria now. Somebody shouted, "Well, we know they was here. Left the lantern behind." The camera found a green propane camper's lantern in the corner. Someone yelled, "Anybody know how to light it?" They didn't. After about 10 minutes of them farting around and Amy yelling into the laptop monitor to just leave it, Jesus Christ, people, they got it lit. Lantern in hand, They ventured out of the cafeteria and into a hallway. Flashlight guy went first. Josh right behind him with the camera gun. The lantern carrier followed, casting a soft glow and distorted shadows around the group. The team investigated 2 other rooms, each time going through this ridiculous SWAT team procedure that Amy had seen in movies, where guys with guns would lean on opposite sides of the doorframe while Josh kicked in the door. Both times, the rooms revealed themselves to be empty. Amy knew exactly nothing about SWAT procedure, but knew from where Josh's gun camera was pointing that he never checked the corners to his right and left when he entered the new rooms. It seemed, even to her untrained eye, that this would make these guys really easy to ambush, and this further solidified her opinion that these guys knew even less about how to walk through a building with guns than she did. They reached a door marked stairs, did their room-entering dance again, and took a flight of stairs down to a sub-basement. They reached a short hallway with some office-type rooms, empty, and one serious-looking metal door. Big lock, a steel grate instead of a window, the kind of door you saw in a prison. It was standing open. Through the door, the guys entered a hallway that to Amy looked a lot like a prison block. Rusting metal doors lined up on each side, a few standing open. Inside each one they checked was a bed, a sink, and a toilet. Amy thought, they were not keeping tuberculosis patients down here. On camera, somebody said, "What's that?" And Josh's gun cam focused on the floor. What was laying there was, for some reason, far creepier to Amy than anything short of a severed clown head. A tattered old teddy bear. A chill ran up her spine, and for the first time she considered asking Fredo if there was a way to contact the guys, to get them to come back, to think up a different plan. Somebody off camera shouted, "Man, what's that smell?" "Maybe the old sewer backed up down here somewhere." The flashlight beam bobbed down a creepy hallway. Somebody tried one of the closed doors. Locked. They peeked inside each of the open ones. No people or zombies. From a foot away from Amy, a voice said, "Anything?" She almost jumped through the roof of the RV. It was Fredo, peering over her shoulder at the laptop screen. "They're inside. They found a window to crawl through. Empty so far. They're on the next floor down." On the video screen, somebody said, Guys! What's that? There, on the floor!" The gun camera swept across the floor, finding nothing until it reached one particular door. Something was oozing out from the bottom. "Oh my God! What is it? Is it blood?" "That's not blood, man. Smell it. Is there a sewer line back there? Shh! Listen!" Amy could hear nothing over the laptop speakers. Donnie, the only guy in the view of the camera, pulled back one ear from his earmuffs, listening intently like a dog. "There's something in there." Everyone fell silent. "You hear it? Something scratching." Somebody said, "Jesus, fuck!" Josh aimed the camera, and thus the shotgun, at the door and said, "It's not locked. Look, it's open just a crack. Donnie, open it up. Open it and get out of the way fast." Slowly, a hand reached in, presumably belonging to Donnie. It pulled the latch on the door and jerked out of the way. The door swung open and, "Oh, Jesus fucking Christ!" Panic. The camera swung around. "What is it, man? What is it? Oh, man, that shit, man, that shit coming up! It's alive, Josh! It's alive! How is it still alive? Kill it, man! Kill it!" There was the sound of banging on metal. The doorway swung back into view and somebody was kicking the door closed. The camera was pulling back. Josh was backing away. Someone was whimpering, "Jesus, man, Jesus! Was that his mouth? What was that? Was that a man? What did they do to him?" Somebody else said, "Was that Ogza? Was that one of the Ogza guys? Motherfucker!" "We can't just leave him like that, man. We can't. Jesus!" The camera view was looking at the floor, at the brown puddles, Then it tracked sideways, following the floor and the other doors down the hall. All of the doors were oozing. The camera tracked the ooze all the way to the end of the hall, where there was a single closed door, a partially obscured sign that said Maintenance at the top. The door was riddled with bullet holes. Josh whispered, "Guys! Guys! Pay attention!" The flashlight swung around and lit up the door. Somebody off camera said, "Oh God, oh God, oh God!" Josh said, "Amy, if you can still see this, make sure it's saving the feed for playback later. If I don't get back, tell my parents and sis that I love them. Safety's off, everybody!" Amy said, "Josh, come back! Come back to the RV now!" Fredo said, "He can't hear you." The camera view wobbled down the hall, the maintenance door growing in the video window. Josh gestured with his free hand, and two guys, Donnie and another guy Amy hadn't seen on camera yet, did their thing, laying against the wall at each side of the door. Josh stood in front of the door. Gun barrels edged into view on his left and his right. Josh said, "On 3. 1, 2... The view shook. There was the crack of a boot kicking a door. This was not coupled with the sound of a door jamb shattering. Instead, the boot gave it another try, and another. Finally, the door swung in. The view whipped around as everybody piled into the room at once. It was a huge room full of rusting pipes and machinery and barrels and crates. "The floor! The floor!" The view panned down. Amy yelped. Someone or something was writhing on the floor of the room. Grasping hands appeared in the flashlight beam. A face. The thing on the floor reached out at Josh's leg, and he kicked it away. People were screaming. Josh was screaming, "Donnie! Get the... Hey, no!" Through the gun cam came the sound of rustling, scraping shoes and gasps and shouts. The flashlight beam was spinning. The camera swung over to it, and something had Flashlight Guy, throwing him around. The flashlight swept the back wall of the room. Zombies. Wall to wall. Shambling, caked with mud, advancing. "They're coming out of the walls! They're coming out of the fucking walls!" Flashlight Guy was spun around again, and his machine gun roared. Amy heard it through the laptop first, and echoing from the building a half-second later. That jolted her into the realization that this was happening right inside the building across the yard, behind exactly 0 locked doors. The same thing seemed to occur to Fredo, who ran back up behind the wheel and buckled in. The video window was black. The flashlight has gone out. Screams. "Mills! Jesus Christ, get back! Ron is down! They got Ron! Get out!" More rustling and jostling around the gun cam. Finally, light appeared. It was the hallway, the lantern still on the floor in front of the oozing door where they'd left it. The view was bouncing. Josh was running away. The gun camera spun around to face the maintenance room door again. No one was following. The view just froze there. The sound of Josh breathing hard, muttering, "Oh Jesus, oh Jesus, oh Jesus, oh Jesus." From behind the door came screams, then gunshots. The view swung again, and Josh was looking into the camera, looking into the barrel of his own gun. He looked like he'd aged 10 years. Sweat matted his hair to his forehead. Tears streamed down his cheeks. Blood was running from his lip. Into the camera, Josh said, "Mom, Dad, Haley, I love you. To the rest of the world, my name is Joshua Nathaniel Cox. I have just witnessed the first shots of the Z-War. Amy, go, now! We're going to hold them off as long as we can, but if we can't stop them, they're going to be right on your tail." Something thudded heavily against the door. Josh closed his eyes and swallowed. The camera view swung back around, the view plunging forward, fast. Josh running into the battle. He stopped to scoop up the lantern, then kicked in the maintenance door. He threw the lantern into the mass of thrashing limbs. The flying lantern illuminated absolute chaos. Bodies falling on top of bodies, strobing bursts of flame from gun barrels, gun smoke filling the room. From the melee lumbered a big, bloody female zombie with matted hair that made it look like Medusa. The camera, and the gun barrel with it, drew dead center on the target and unleashed a burst of hellfire that tore into the beast. It let out an inhuman shriek and fell, flames sputtering across its ragged clothes. The view swung to the left. A dark-skinned zombie was trying to wrestle the gun away from another member of the squad. Josh unleashed the dragon's breath once more, clipping the target on the shoulder. It stumbled back, and Josh fired again, and again. Each shot blazed out like a lethal Roman candle. Josh was screaming, a battle cry. Donnie was next to him, and he opened fire with his Vietnam gun, side by side. The two unloaded into the room. "Josh, it's me! Don't shoot!" The view swung over to show Flashlight Guy stumbling over the tangle of smoking bodies on the floor. He joined the other two, raised his gun, and the three turned the room into a shooting gallery. Josh yelled, "Where's Mills?" "They got him! They got everybody but us!" I'm out of ammo!" Josh screamed, "Get back!" The camera leveled at the lantern laying on the floor. The barrel jutting up from the bottom of the frame roared once more. The lantern burst into a ball of flame. The screen flared white, then to total darkness. The sounds of the battle faded into a trio of hurried footsteps and frantic breathing. They emerged into the hall. "Amy! Fredo! Can you hear me? Prepare for evac!" 2 hours earlier. At the sight of Molly and her bloody hunk of meat, TJ screamed, "Holy shit, stand back! Get back!" I said, "Okay, I really don't think she tore that spine out of a living person. And how do you know that?" "Because she doesn't have any blood on her paws or her face. I think she just found it, so, let's figure out whose spine it is." Hope was already walking down the hall, past the bank of dead elevators, watching the floor as she went. Blood. A smeared trail of it, where Molly had been dragging the spine. TJ followed Hope, put his hand on her shoulder, and took the lead. I made Molly drop the spine and grabbed her collar. I dragged her along, while we all followed TJ like we were the Scooby-Doo gang. We went down 2 flights of stairs and arrived at a staff-only door in the basement. Behind it was a dark hallway, no windows and no lights. Without a word, Hope clicked on a flashlight and handed it to TJ. The blood smear ended partway down the hall, presumably at the point before the spine got too heavy for Molly to keep it aloft in her jaws. But there were only 3 doors, an employee restroom, a break room, and a door that read boiler room. The bathroom was clean. Well, not clean, but there were no corpses in there. People were eating calmly in the break room, by candlelight. We went back into the hall again and stared at the boiler room door. TJ said he'd go check it out first, since he had the only flashlight, and I thought that was a good plan. He leaned his shoulder against the door, the flashlight held at the ready like it was a gun, when he turned to me and said, "You coming, Spider-Man?" So apparently I was an extension of TJ somehow, which was not mentioned when he apparently volunteered on behalf of both of us. With Hope and Molly behind us in the hall, TJ pushed the door open and expertly shone the light in one corner, then the other. Ambush points, I guess. Nobody home. There was a massive dead machine to our right, a pair of huge armored barrels laying on their side, sprouting pipes big enough for a raccoon to crawl through. Boiler. TJ edged over, checked behind the cylinders, and swept the flashlight across the concrete floor. Nothing. Then, the light found another metal door on the opposite side of the room, paint peeling around the edges and stained with rust, and I realized we weren't finished. The door was standing partially open, wide enough for a dog to slip through. The floor was streaked with red. TJ edged over toward it, and I wondered why we didn't just go get Owen to lead the way with his pistol. What were we going to do if some spidered-out zombie came leaping out at us? Die to serve as a cautionary tale to the others? Was that our role here? TJ pushed the door in. Same procedure with the light. Corner clear. Clear behind the door. Suddenly, we were in a room from an earlier century. Exposed bricks on every wall, black with grime and patched with cobwebs. a remnant of the original building, buried by multiple renovations. TJ swept the flashlight across the floor and hit a pair of dead eyes, staring up from a white face, wreathed with matted, bloody hair. A woman, middle-aged. Her torso was still wearing a green jumpsuit, but everything from her ribcage down was white bone draped with shredded crimson ribbons. Shit! That's Rhonda! Okay, and who's the other one? TJ hadn't noticed the other body yet, but I pointed, and he found it with the light, face down, next to the far wall. It was a guy who looked like his ass had been blown out with a grenade. His abdomen had a flat, deflated shape, disemboweled from the back end. Spine was missing. TJ sighed and said, "Carlos got him." He approached the face-down corpse and lifted the head with his foot. "Don't know this guy." TJ did another sweep with his light to make sure that Carlos wasn't in the room with us. I said, "Who is Carlos, by the way, other than the monster who eats people's assholes?" TJ shrugged. "Don't know him in any other capacity. Suave little Latino dude. We identified him as infected, but he didn't show any signs, and he didn't seem to know, so we didn't tell him. Then one day, with no warning, he transforms right in front of us, like Optimus Prime if he was made of meat. Turns into this wicked corkscrew worm thing and digs into the dirt. Comes up when he gets hungry, or when somebody sits down. Look." I followed the beam to a hole in the back wall large enough for a man to crawl through, a pile of brick bits scattered on the floor below. TJ approached it, and I said, "Hey, let me get Owen. This operation needs a gun. You're gonna want to see this. Check it." I very slowly edged closer, trying to see into the jagged hole. Is there another room back there? Look. A tunnel. Leaking, muddy, and twitching with insect life. It was lined with red brick and arched at the top, extending to infinity. It was maybe 5 feet wide and high, but much of the space was filled with ancient rusting iron pipes that ran along the walls. He said, "Old steam tunnel, to service another building." "What other building?" "Don't know. Maybe one that's not even there anymore. Crawl in there and find out." "No thanks. We know it ends past the perimeter, though, and outside where anybody patrols, man or robot." "Because your dog got in through here." "Yup." For the benefit of the woman waiting tensely in the hall, TJ said, "All clear in here, girl. We're coming out." I headed for the door and said, "Am I allowed to call a quarantine-wide meeting, or is Owen the only one who gets to do that?" "Well, now, wait. Why does this need a meeting?" I stopped to face TJ, just short of the door to the hallway. I lowered my voice and said, "To see who all wants to try to escape from this freaking prison? You want everybody to know about this?" "Why wouldn't I? Even the Reds?" "I don't think the color teams mean anything outside these fences, TJ. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about taking 150 or so high-risk patients out of quarantine." "Now, come on. The red equals high-risk thing, that's just talking about the new people, right? Everybody out there has been spider-checked." "Owen hasn't. A lot of people haven't. They had you check all the new arrivals, but a lot of people got grandfathered in because when we suggested a check of everybody, Owen started waving his gun around." "But if they haven't, monstered out by now, then we know they're not—" "You sure about that? We got no idea when Carlos got infected. The girl you almost missed, she was walking around like you and me, parasite and all, for a week or so. Isn't that what she said? How many more like her could we have in here? Think about that now. You leave somebody outside these gates, you're responsible for whatever they may do once they're out." "But if I leave uninfected people behind and they get incinerated if the Air Force nukes this place, then I'm also responsible." "That's right. God damn it, TJ. Listen, let's say you're right. Let's say they intend to turn this whole facility into a crater. What that means is Somebody's got to get them to change their mind about that. Whoever gets out of here, the first thing they got to do is get the word out to the chain of command that there's innocent people in quarantine, uninfected. So that group that gets out, it's got to act as a representative of what's inside. Got to put a good face on the quarantine. So it's got to be people we know are clean. They're going to be our ambassadors to the outside world, right? But we don't know how much time we have. I'm not done. If, on the other hand, we help infected leak out into the town and they start wreaking havoc and multiplying, then the same dudes looking at a map with a little red circle around this hospital are going to draw a bigger red circle around this whole town, right? And you think your girl is out there? And John and whoever else in this town you care about? That place that makes those Cuban sandwiches. Yeah, Cuba Libre. You had that coffee, man? No way we can let them bomb that place. You see the waitresses? Mm-hmm. Whoever does the hiring there, he's definitely an ass man. All right. So, who gets to go? Well, see, Spider-Man? Now there's a tough-ass decision we got to make. 7 people were waiting for TJ and me out in the hall outside the boiler room. In addition to Hope, Wheelchair was there, along with Corey, the curly-haired kid who'd come in on the truck earlier, an old guy whose name I didn't know, Lenny, a short, balding white guy who looked like Vizzini from The Princess Bride, and the 2 women who heard the commotion and wandered in from the break room. We told everyone about the tunnel, and the 2 bodies. Old guy said casually to TJ, "Which wall is it on, nigger?" Without blinking, TJ said, "North." Old guy nodded thoughtfully and said, "That's what I thought. Same boiler used to service the other buildings before they tore down the old hospital and built this one up on top of it. Probably, 50 or 60 years ago. Now, back in those days, if a black so much as brushed past a white woman on the sidewalk, they'd have him hung by torchlight come nightfall. But, of course, a lot has changed since then. Me and my friends, we had a bluegrass band back in the 1960s. I think Racist Ed is right," said TJ. "How far to the other end, Ed?" "Oh, you're talking about half a mile, porch monkey. Long way to crawl. I couldn't make it on these knees. You know, the workers back then would have a cart they'd lay on, and there was a pulley system, and you'd just lay on your back, and then down at the end you'd have a big, strong nigger turning a crank. Well, there's no pulley system in there now, so we gotta make some knee pads, or else all our knees will be a hamburger by the time we get out the other end. But if Racist Ed is right, there may be 700 or 800 meters of tunnel there. That's a long stretch to crawl over brick and mud. If you're in pretty good shape, I bet you can make it in 20 minutes. If you're not, and you gotta constantly stop and rest your knees, it could be an hour getting through there. So first question is, who's up for it? Show of hands." Everyone but Racist Ed. That's 8 of us, and that's a pretty big group already. If I could pick the optimal number to take on this mission, I'd stop right here. "I'm not leaving without Terry," said the bald guy. "If it comes to that, I'll stay behind." "I wasn't finished. What I was saying was, I don't expect any of you to leave loved ones behind, but that's all you can take." Wheelchair said, "We gotta tell Dennis and Laurent." Hope said, "Katie and Danny." TJ said, "Okay, now see, we're getting up to more than a dozen people now. Take some time to think about it, but you get very much beyond that, and it goes from a group sneaking through to get the word out to an all-out prison break that's going to provoke a full-on response. No way we can go with more than 15 people." "What about the sick people and the doc?" said Hope. TJ sighed and rubbed his head. "What about 'em?" "Katie's one of the nurses. She said some of the sick are so bad off that they're not going to last long if they don't get to a real hospital. The diarrhea is so bad, they're getting dehydrated." "Babe, how are they going to crawl through a half-mile of tunnel if they're that sick? What if they get halfway through and can't go no farther? We got no way of getting them out, and they're clogging up the tunnel for everybody else. It's narrow, real narrow. There's pipes all around. You'll see." "And what about the doc? He'll have to know." "Why does he have to know?"
Well, for one, he's going to notice Katie gone when she doesn't show up to the second floor to help. And if we don't tell him where she went, he's going to waste time looking for her. 2, we're going to need to take some stuff with us. Bandages, basic first aid. Doc has all that up there. And we're out of the mouthwash. We used the last of it today. We need to take some with us, and that means we need the doc to make it.
I said, actually, she makes a good point with people being noticed gone. Everything is going to fly into turmoil when Owen and the rest notices a bunch of us missing. People will think we got eaten or something. That could turn ugly if it becomes a witch hunt. TJ said, yeah, we'll leave a note. Saying what? I'll think of something. Fuck, man. Look, we come back and we meet out in the hall in 1 hour. Hope, go get Katie and tell her that if they have sick people up there who can't last a single more day but are still somehow capable of crawling for a half-mile through the freezing mud, that we'll take them. Dave, go see the doc and get him to make up a jug of mouthwash. But you got to have him put it in something that's not going to leak when it's banging around in the tunnel. I said, okay, do you know where the doctor is right now? Or if not, what he looks like, so I'll know him when I find him? TJ stared at me. The doc? Marconi? Wait, he's here? Where else would he be? Ah, you're pulling that unfrozen caveman shit. Yes, he's here. And he don't sleep. Didn't you go talk to him after you got back from the hole? Like I told you? No. You need to go now, man. He's been asking about you. The situation is much worse than I had thought, said Dr. Marconi. He was leaning over an unconscious woman and shining a flashlight into her eye. I had actually only seen this man in person once. Every other time it was on television or on a book jacket. The neat white beard, the glasses down on his nose, and here he was, standing in front of me, not dressed in a red or green jumpsuit, but in the same style of three-piece suit I'd seen him in on TV. Only now, the man wearing it looked like he hadn't slept in a decade. He glanced up at me expectantly and said, "What did you find out?" "I'm totally lost here, Doctor. My memory of this whole quarantine experience only goes back to earlier today. I remember up to the chaos of the outbreak, and then the next thing I remember is waking up over at the asylum with no idea where I was or how I got there. I had no idea you were here, and I have no memory of us ever speaking." Marconi turned his back on his patient to give me his full attention. "They wiped your memory?" I don't know. You think they can do that? Just pick a specific bunch of memories and erase it like files on a hard drive? Oh, I'm sure there's no method to do such a thing safely. I also do not believe these men give a tinker's damn about such things. You mean Reaper? He shrugged. If that's what they're calling themselves now. How did you wind up here again? Your friend John called me the day after the outbreak, after he got your lady friend clear of the danger. I flew down and offered my services to the task force here, who happily gave me a job and sent out a press release declaring such. You see, by then amateur video had emerged that revealed to the public that this in fact was not a conventional disease outbreak or bioweapon attack. The word zombie was being bandied about. Someone very high in the operation was very happy to fan those flames by attaching a name like mine, if you take my meaning. I did not. When the decision was made to pull the containment staff from quarantine last week, I volunteered to stay behind because otherwise the detained would be left without medical care. Wait, are you that kind of doctor? I thought you just had a doctorate in ghosts or something. Ignoring me, he said, "My instincts turned out to be right because patients that have reported here with seemingly minor symptoms have turned out to in fact be infected with the parasite." Holy shit, really? Marconi nodded to a row of large, clear plastic pitchers sitting on a nearby cart, and I recoiled to the point of nearly falling down. Each pitcher contained a spider. 2 of them were fully grown. Another was no bigger than my thumb. The last was at some stage of growth in between. One of the big ones was badly damaged, half of its body missing. Calmly, he said, "They're quite dead."
"You can see them?"
He shrugged. "Sometimes, with great concentration. I do not have your gift, but I know some techniques, though I should say, and I hope you will not take offense, that I would not accept your gift if you offered it to me in a basket along with a bottle of Glenfiddich."
"And you know how to kill these fuckers, right?"
I held up the now empty bleach jugs I'd brought with me.
"You came up with the, mouthwash? The poison? So, you're close."
"Close to what? A cure? It is no great feat to kill a parasite in a way that also brutally kills the host. No, I am not close to a cure for what the parasite does to the human body, in that what it does is rebuild the body from the inside out in a way that violates everything we know about human physiology. At this stage, I'm simply trying to perfect a way to detect infection."
"I still don't understand how this works. I mean, I've watched these things crawl right up to people's faces, and they couldn't see them, but they can merge with your body in a way that somehow blends in, like it becomes just visible enough to—"
"David, how can you, of all people, still be surprised when our eyes fail us? The human eye has to be one of the cruelest tricks nature ever pulled. We can see a tiny cone-shaped area of light right in front of our faces, restricted to a very narrow band of the electromagnetic spectrum. We can't see around walls. We can't see heat or cold. We can't see electricity or radio signals. We can't see at a distance. It is a sense so limited that we might as well not have it, yet we have evolved to depend so heavily on it as a species that all other perception has atrophied. We have wound up with the utterly mad and often fatal delusion that if we can't see something, it doesn't exist. Virtually all of civilization's failures can be traced back to that one ominous sentence, "I'll believe it when I see it." We can't even convince the public that global warming is dangerous. Why? Because carbon dioxide happens to be invisible.
"But we just have to figure out how to detect them, right? Like, somebody will build a machine or something. Once we can detect them, we can kill them."
In answer to that, I need only to offer 2 words: Plasmodium falciparum.
Do I even want to know what that is?
Exactly. It's a monster that has slain several billion of your fellow man, and you don't even know its name. It's the microscopic parasite that causes malaria. Nearly half of all human deaths in recorded history have been caused by this invisible assassin. One could make the argument that Plasmodium falciparum is the dominant life form on the planet, and that human civilization exists purely to give it a breeding ground. Yet, until very, very recently, we had no idea what it was. We blamed witchcraft and evil spirits and angry gods. We prayed and performed ceremonies and ritually murdered those we believed were responsible. And meanwhile we died, and died, and died. Yet, to this day, you could have Plasmodium falciparum on your hands right now, and you wouldn't know, because after all, if you can't see it, surely it can't hurt you.
Marconi strode out of the room and said, "Follow me." He walked me down the hall and showed me where 6 rooms were occupied with a total of 9 unconscious patients.
Our flu patients started showing up 48 hours ago with uncontrollable diarrhea. I have a feeling if we still had power to the MRI, we'd find some nasty changes going on inside. Or maybe not. Maybe you have to wait until transformation for that.
Jesus Christ, they're infected?
This is what I wanted to tell you about. Several of them passed your mouth inspection upon arrival. It turns out there is more than one way for the parasite to enter the body.
How do they—
Did you hear the part about the diarrhea?
Oh, Jesus.
Yes.
And you're just keeping them up here? With the sick people?
They could spider out at any time. I don't think so. The propofol seems to shut down the process. You see that we have them strapped to the beds as well. It's the best we can do under the circumstances. When the sedative runs out in a few days, well, we'll have a decision to make. What decision? Kill the fuckers, Doc, before they get loose. He said nothing. I said, I can get you out of quarantine. And I mean right now. We found a way out. You did? Old steam tunnel in the basement. Reaper, or whoever, didn't know about it because it had been bricked up. Leads right past the perimeter. We're keeping it quiet, but if you want to go, come with me. To what end? Where else am I going to be allowed to work hands-on with infected patients? No, I'm most effective here. Suit yourself. And what do you hope to accomplish, if I may? Freedom? And I don't want to sound like a pessimist, but word on the street is the military has declared this whole hunk of land a loss and is about to drop a big goddamn bomb on it. We had a conversation about this when I first arrived, a conversation that I suppose you now no longer remember. About my book, titled The Babel Threshold? Ring any bells? No. Sounds like it stars Jason Bourne. I know time is short, but I think you missed an important point earlier about these patients. The symptom that brought them up here was diarrhea, not nightmarish spontaneous deformity or propensity for violence. They showed no other symptoms. None. And I'm starting to believe that there are others that show no symptoms at all, and that we may never be able to detect the infection until it's too late. I think the parasite is adapting, learning to stay under cover longer and more effectively. Now, what do you think will be the world's reaction when that fact comes to light? My answer wasn't something I wanted to hear myself say out loud. Finally, I said, so what you're saying is, if the military is going to wipe this quarantine off the map, do I really want to stop them? Think about it. Think about whose purpose is served if the bombs fall. Think about whose purpose is served if they don't. How about you just tell me? That would require me to actually know myself. On the way down, I stopped at the lobby and peeked out of the main doors to make sure we hadn't aroused suspicion. What few people were still out in the brisk night were gathered by the south fence, watching the sky like they were expecting a tornado. I wandered out until I found a green, an older, bearded guy, and asked what was happening. He shrugged. Somebody shooting flares over at the asylum. Flares? What does that mean? Probably don't mean shit. Could be a kid with leftover fireworks for all we know. But it took a whole 3 minutes for the rumor to spread around the yard that it meant a posse was going to break through the fence and set us all free. Give us all Cadillacs for our trouble. Why not? Somebody said, Look! Look, another one! Red this time! I turned in time to see the ball of magnesium die and fade to earth, murmuring from the crowd. I said, Well, I'm going to bed. If it's a rescue party, throw a rock up at the window or something, and save me a caddy. By the time I made it back down to the basement, 27 goddamn people were packed in the boiler room, spilling out into the hallway. A buzzing, murmuring crowd of people who, even though they had been stripped of all possessions when they entered quarantine, somehow all had luggage. Backpacks and garbage bags and various random shit they thought they would need. The people were knocking around and slamming doors and giggling and asking questions and basically conducting the least stealthy prison escape in history. The Reds were asleep, most of them anyway, but it would take exactly one of them to discover the massive conga line of people piling into the boiler room to blow the whole operation. TJ was so pissed, he looked like steam was about to start whistling from his asshole. Hope was trying to calm him down, trying to work through the logistics. What about knee pads, huh? He said, wrapping electrician's tape around the caps of the 2 jugs of the binary chemical mouthwash. I suppose we came up with knee pads for 2 or 3 dozen people in the last half hour? No, but we have duct tape, said Hope reassuringly.
All people gotta do is take off their shoes and tape them to their knees. You know, like Dorf.
Like who?
It works, all right? Katie and I did it and crawled around the floor. From one